It's your boy, Flavor Flav, and this is Criss Angel's Talking Junkies.
I know everyone is going to be jealous because I'm sitting here with the king of Jiu-Jitsu. I'm talking about none other than Gordon Ryan.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's so awesome to have you here, man. It's so funny because we've known each other through Mind Freak.
Yes.
You used to play around with magic or watch magic?
A little. My parents always liked you, and this was like probably 20 years ago. And so,
So you were like a
we
kid.
would always watch Mind Freak, and I remember I was really young, but I remember the levitation thing. Obviously, there was one where you were in a park and you were doing a trick with benches and kids in the park, and then the height of it was like you levitating right from the pyramid, and my parents like obsessed with you, so I would always watch you, and then like fast forward 20 years, and my mom actually introduced us. My mom was like, "Oh my God, I just met, one of Criss Angel's friends. Remember we used to watch him?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course." And she's like, "Well, he called him and we talked on the phone and he said, 'Oh, next time you're in Vegas, let's come to a show.'" I'm like, "Holy shit, like Criss Angel's inviting me to a show." So then last time I didn't have time, but then, I came here and you're like, "Oh yeah, come to the show." And, it was one of the best shows ever for sure. I always look at magicians and I'm like, I'm trying to figure out how the fuck this guy does these things. And then me and her, the whole show, were just like, oh my God, that was fucking insane.
And it's all about misdirection, and you're the master at that in
Yes, I
jiu-jitsu,
try to
right? It's trying to make people think you're going to do this, but you persuade them to do what you want them to do, right? It's basically controlling them mentally. And that really is, what you've been the king of, on top of everything physical, but it's really understanding how to get into people, their psyche, and really manipulate a situation and make people think you're going to do one thing when you're really doing something else. Now, what I'm interested in, obviously everybody knows you've won the super fight, 2022, the king of jiu-jitsu, and for me though, what I'm really fascinated with is understanding what it's like, because you have so many people, and trust me, I went through this to some extent, but you're going through it in a meaningful way right now. Haters. Like, what's your takeaway? Because you put things that are very provocative on social media. You even say, I'm probably going to have to use this other account because I'll be, blocked. What's that like to deal with people that love to hate you because they're obviously insecure and jealous?
Well, one of the best quotes I've ever heard, I forget who it's by, is don't take criticism from someone who you wouldn't take advice from. So like when people post, I'm just like, who the fuck is this guy? So I just have fun with it. Like, people are like, oh man, like you're so insecure, you're online and arguing with people. I'm like, no, I do this for fun. Like this is what I do in like my pastime. Because, they come on and they say some stupid thing and I'm like, oh, well, actually here's the statistics and this is why you're wrong. And then they just don't have anything to say. It's like a fun thing for me. Like I
like sparring.
Yeah. I like arguing with people. I'm just very, very competitive and, I don't shy away from confrontation. So there's too many people to respond to all of them now. Like when I was like 2016, when I first broke out, I was like, I'm just going to respond to everybody. But now there's just like thousands and thousands a day. So I just like go like, maybe 10 of them or whatever. But yeah, it's just fun for me. I just have fun with it. And the fans love it. Like the fans love when I just come on and douche all the haters, which is like very rare for someone that's like a high level athlete. Most people just ignore everybody. So I try to be different and unique and try to change it up a little bit and be different from the rest of the guys.
So you've conquered jiu-jitsu. I mean, you've achieved everything you possibly can. I mean, I know you want to go for 15, but for the most part, you conquered it. Why have you ever played around with MMA?
So I was actually planning to compete in MMA in 2018, 19. And then I tore my LCL in a match in early 2019. And then coming off that surgery, I was getting ready for ADCC. So I was like, man, I just tore my LCL. I have to jump right into ADCC camp off this recovery. And then I got caught up with the ADCC camp, and then I won double gold for ADCC. So then I had to do the super fight the next year, and I kind of just keep getting roped back into jiu-jitsu because I kept winning more and more. And then I talked to John one day. I'm like, dude, like, what should I do? And he's like, you're already like the greatest of all time in jiu-jitsu. You already make more money than most MMA fighters. And we're at a point now where jiu-jitsu is like right on the cusp of being like a real mainstream sport. He's like, there's no reason for you to move to MMA. And I actually think that you would be better suited just for your legacy, just to stay with jiu-jitsu and to really kickstart jiu-jitsu into a mainstream sport and just finish your career with a record that's just will never be disputed in your lifetime or wherever. And John is a very smart man, and he really hasn't been much.
What's the relationship with John and you?
So
Just so
yeah,
people
so John Danaher is our coach, and he's very, very smart. He was a professor at Columbia, and you know, I've been training with him now almost a decade, and over a decade now actually. And fuck, I'm getting old.
Me too.
And,
I could be your father.
Yeah, and so so you know, John has been, you know, one of my main mentors, you know, throughout my career, and he was like, you should just stay with jiu-jitsu, at least until, you know, one of the other guys, you know, comes forward and is doing the things you can do. And so I kind of just kept getting roped back into jiu-jitsu. I was winning, you know, I won, you know, ADCC, then I won double gold, then I had to do the super fight. Now I won the super fight. Now I got to defend the super fight title. So and then, you know, I talked to John, and John's like, just do jiu-jitsu, man. So I kind of just like got into this path of just doing jiu-jitsu, and, you know, I'm pretty comfortable just going out and doing jiu-jitsu, and jiu-jitsu is fun for me. You know, I make, you know, enough money to, you know, have a good life, and I don't have to get punched in the face. So,
And what inspires you? Like, what keeps you going? Because, you know, the training is brutal, right? Getting through injuries and different things. We talked about stem cells and the different things that you have to do to try to overcome, you know, certain types of injuries. What keeps you motivated and inspires you? Because that's what separates champions from everyone else, right?
yeah, well, I think that most people are just trying to beat the best guy in the world, or you know, beat the number 2 guy in the world, whatever the case is. I'm not really trying to compete against the number 2 guy in the world, because that would be boring. I just, you know, 2018, I would have done that and then just stopped doing jiu-jitsu or got bored with it. Really, what I'm trying to do is compete against myself and just be the best that I possibly can before I reach my physical prime in jiu-jitsu, which is somewhere between the ages of 35 and 40, because jiu-jitsu is an isometric-based sport rather than an explosion-based sport. So you peak much later because your isometric strength fades a lot later than your explosivity. So my real goal is just to be the best Gordon I can be before I go over that hump and I come out of my prime, which should be hopefully around the age of 40 if I'm still healthy. So I'm not really competing against the other guys. I'm just competing against myself, because that's how you keep it interesting. You know, my question is always, you know, can the Gordon from 6 months or a year ago beat me up right now? And if the answer is yes, it's a problem. So I always want to be able.
If the answer is yes, do you say it's time to move on?
No, it just keeps me honest. I need to change things. Like, you know, obviously the Gordon from 4 or 5 months ago, when I was training for like my last match, would be able to beat me up right now because I had surgery. But the answer has never been yes. The Gordon from 6 months ago can beat up the Gordon from Gordon right now, provided I'm healthy. And so I always ask myself that pretty frequently, and that keeps me honest. Like, okay, if the answer is starting to stumble upon yes, then what can I change to make sure that I'm still progressing in a timely fashion, and you know, moving into new situations where I have new technology, new techniques, things like that.
I mean, my question now is applicable to anyone, into any field or any hobby. You wake up, you don't feel like going to the gym. You don't feel like getting out of bed. You're hurt, you're this, you're that. How do you overcome that and get into the gym, roll, lift weights, do the things that, you know, probably feel in some way sometimes mundane, and, you know, you just want to do something else?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, it's obviously different for me because it's my job, and then most people it's just a hobby. Um, but motivation can be an issue, but discipline should never be an issue. So a lot of days I get up and I'm like, man, I'm really fucking tired. But you get up and you do it, and you know, a lot of times you can't go balls to the wall every session. I do 2 sessions a day, every day, Monday to Friday, and then I do Saturday and Sunday 1 session a day, and I lift 4 times a week. So if you go balls to the wall every session, you're going to be cooked. A lot of times I go and I just go light. I go with people who aren't as skilled as me. I work defensive stuff. I train light. So you have to pace yourself. You can't just go as hard as you can every single round, every session. Otherwise, you just get
So
burnt
you
out.
basically will go in and say, okay, I learned this, or I was playing around with this new move, or from a move from my back, and then you just get somebody that's not as skilled as you, and then you basically get on your back and you just kind of, you know, repping that technique.
Exactly, yeah. Or I'll grab like a blue belt, and you know, maybe I have a guy who who has, he's an up and coming guy who's either smaller than me or my size, whatever the case is. And I know that he has like one move that he's good at. Maybe he's good at a certain kind of triangle. And I'm like, okay, well, I know that he's good at this move, and I'm really tired today, so I'm just gonna let him work through his positions and put me in a triangle throughout the whole round. And I'll try to work out of the triangle and go into my offense. And you know, maybe I get out every time. Maybe he submits me 3, 4 times. Maybe we go back and forth, whatever the case is. But it doesn't matter because it's training. So I just I grab a guy and I work out of bad positions. And when you let a guy pass your guard and mount you and take your back, and then he works into submissions, it's very low energy for you. And the worst case scenario, you get submitted and then you restart. I pace myself through the sessions and through the week, depending on how my body feels. But for me, it's just like any other job. Like you have a job, you get up, you go to work. And I think that's the big issue in our sport is most people who are even professional athletes competing at a world level, they treat it like a hobby. Like they'll train 3 times a week. I'm like, well, this isn't a hobby. This is your job. Like you have to go there every day. And if you want to excel at it or be the best in the world at it, you have to do like the extra work. So I mean, for me, it's a job, but for most people, it's just the motivation can always be an issue, but the discipline should never be an issue. And you always feel better after a workout. Like a lot of times you're like, oh, fuck, I don't want to go and lift weights. But then you go and you lift weights, you're like, oh man, I'm so glad I did that. I feel so much better now. So it's just a matter of just once you get started, it's pretty easy to get through. And then once you get through it, you're like, oh, thank God I did that.
And do you believe that, because I'm sure you've had failure, you have to have failure, is that basically the biggest learning opportunity for you, like when you have to tap in your early years? Did that, as somebody that studies jiu-jitsu or MMA, does that make you like, fuck, I got to figure that out, I can't do that again? Does that motivate you more? Or because some people, like, there's shows in Vegas that they try to have a show and it just fails and they run away, they close the doors and they leave town. But others that really have the ability to dream and to want to live that dream, look at that failure as the biggest learning experience of the career, like myself, quite frankly.
Yeah, 100%. Like if a lot of people say you either win or you learn. Well, I think that you should be able to learn just as much from winning as you do from losing. Like even if I win a match, I'll go back and I look at the match that I won, and I'm like, okay, I did this, and this wrong. We should fix that. But because the loss hurts more, you tend to go back and you tend to study that more because you have like an emotional connection to it. But you can learn just as much from winning as you can from losing, because there's always, even if you win a match in jiu-jitsu particularly, there's always some flaws in your game that you can improve upon. But yeah, you need losses, whether it's in the gym, and if you do jiu-jitsu, like you have a lot of those in the gym, especially when you start training. Everybody beats you up.
Yeah.
And then
I have Frank,
Yes.
rolling with me, and just like
He's an
can't.
extreme example because he's very good and he's enormous.
And then I have Greg. He's a second-degree black belt, and like he's smaller, but I just, it's just frustrating as all hell. When on your feet, you have a shot. Like I caught Frank with a roundhouse kick to his head, and he's like the most amazing professor. He doesn't kill me. He wants me to learn, and he's great. But on the ground, you can never have that opportunity. It's really based skill. Your skill level and your technique is going to win every single time. Whereas on your feet, you can get a lucky shot in.
Yeah, a lot can go wrong in a very short amount of time on the feet, but you have to do a lot of things wrong on the ground for a more skilled grappler to lose to a less skilled grappler. Whereas if you're striking, a less skilled striker has a much higher chance of beating a higher skilled striker. But like in jiu-jitsu, like, okay, in order to lose, you gotta get taken down, your guard has to get passed, you gotta get mounted, you gotta get your back taken, then you gotta get finished. Like a lot of steps have to go wrong in order to get finished by a guy who's not as good. Whereas when you're striking, it's like, okay, I'm in the wrong spot for a half a second, a punch lands, and that's the end of the fight. So yeah, it's definitely a big difference in that matter.
Yeah, because anything can happen, and that's why you say jiu-jitsu is in some ways it's a slower game, it's more methodical, it's a chess game, right? But the transitions and the predicaments you can find yourself in can be incredibly mentally difficult because you feel like you're being smothered. You feel like your arm is, you know that better than anybody. How do you work through those moments? Like, what do you just relax and say, okay, I'm becoming one with the pain. I hung by fish hooks. It was the most painful thing I could ever do in my life. And I just accepted it. And I just said, you know what? I'm going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to become one with the pain. And I'm just going to I'm alive. So it's beautiful to feel this pain. Like, I play tricks with myself. What do you do when you're in a situation that is really fucking uncomfortable?
Yeah, I agree. For me, I like to embrace the suffering. Like that suffering and being uncomfortable makes me feel alive. I'm like, oh, like this is, this is what I want. um, but I think for the average person, if you're in bottom mounts, you're exhausted, you're breathing heavy, and you have this giant sweaty guy on top of you. Maybe his gi's open or whatever the case is, or he's shirtless and he has this hairy chest in your face. You're like, why am I here? You can always have the confidence in knowing that if at any point it gets too much, you can just tap and then you can reset and then it stops. I think so. For once you accept that, okay, I'm not doomed to this position forever, and if at worst case scenario I can get out of it if I tap, and once you accept that, then it becomes a lot easier because then you can work through it. You're like, okay, if I have to get out, I can. It's when you're in a situation where if you're tied up and you're like, okay, well, if I can't get out of here myself, no one's going to let me out. Then you start to panic. But you have kind of an out because you can tap and then.
So
then the match
with that said, there's this whole thing going on that I see on like Instagram, right? People are saying jiu-jitsu is bullshit in a street fight. I say they're crazy to say that. But like, not that you would ever get into confrontation because you'd be scared of getting sued like anyone that's successful.
Well, in Texas, a little bit easier.
Yeah,
we have like castle
better
laws
than New York. Better than New York.
Definitely better than New York.
Choking somebody out in a train station that's threatening everybody, which is nuts. That the guy, they want to put him in jail. It's crazy. But if you ever did you ever have a scuffle?
I've been in dozens of fights. Yeah,
like street fights.
Yeah, for sure.
And normally, what is the go-to plan for that?
I mean, every fight I've been in, it's like the simplest. I mean,
rear naked choke?
Training with a person who has never done any martial arts or grappled in their life is literally like playing with a child, no matter what size they are. So every fight is like identical. You
you have to take them down.
You like fake a punch. You like hit a single, like basically just touch their legs and they fall over.
Right.
And they like turtle and they're like trying to stand up and they're like looking where you're at and they just strangle them unconscious. Like it's like a 20-second ordeal and that's kind of it.
That's one of the things that I love, Frank, is that he teaches me sequences. So we'll do neutral stance. So like most fights start in neutral. They don't start with like your hands up, neutral stance. And basically you turn the person and you get their back in like 4 or 5 seconds, it's done. And that's what he used when he was security, a bouncer for hundreds of fights. And it always ended up being something successful because you're also getting people on the element of surprise. They're not expecting that.
Yeah, 100%. The whole dilemma is always either exposing the center line or exposing the back. And so most people, when you're a fighter, are already standing square. So the center line's exposed. So you just shoot double legs on them. And if they're standing bladed, then you just arm drag, take their back, and take them down. And then it's like the easiest thing ever. And they have no idea what's going on, of course. They're all emotionally.
You can't do that now because you'll be sued.
Yeah.
And you have something to lose. Right?
Yeah.
It's like it's a crazy situation. And what do you think about the explosion of jiu-jitsu? It's everywhere now. Everybody's learning it, whether online or whatever. Everybody is going crazy for jiu-jitsu. It's not like the Gracies when they first came into like MMA, like UFC. It was like a very small cult audience. Now it's everywhere. It's so commercial, which is great for you.
I think it's great. I like our last like ADCC. Like ADCC is basically our Olympics. It happens every 2 years, and that's like our most prestigious tournament. Our last ADCC, like we sold out 13,000 tickets in the Thomas and Mack and here in Vegas. Next year we're trying to do T-Mobile. So that'll be big. And you have all these celebrities doing it now. Like Rogan does a great job of promoting it. You have all these celebrities train jiu-jitsu, and
including the Facebook, right?
Yeah. Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg wants to fight.
What do you rate Honestly, did you see that video of him
So I saw some
winning the gold?
I saw some clips. I mean, he's been training. Only been training for a little while, and you know, kudos to him. He's getting out there. He's competing. He's making himself uncomfortable, and he definitely doesn't have to do that. He doesn't even have to train martial arts because he could just hire security guards.
Yeah,
to be around him all the
arm
time.
security.
Yeah.
But what do you think about this whole Elon Musk Zuckerberg matchup that Dana is working on? What do you think about that?
I think it's interesting. I think they should do a grappling match maybe first, and then a fight second. But it's very interesting because first of all, Elon is so much bigger than Mark, and Elon's also a lot older. Mark is in his 30s, and Elon's in his 50s.
I don't think Elon has ever trained in anything, has he?
I heard he did judo when he was younger. But
So
I'm not
I would
positive.
say the cage match MMA.
But
Anything goes. I know you're a jiu-jitsu guy.
no,
So
I think MMA fight would definitely be more interesting.
Yeah.
But it's funny because
two billionaires
George-
beating the hell out of each other.
George St. Pierre reached out on Twitter to Elon and said, like, I'll help you. And Elon said, like, let's do it. And so Elon is friends with Lex Friedman, they both live in Austin, and Lex and Elon trained. So I think this week, George is going to be in Austin. So I think he might be bringing Elon into Roca where we train.
Oh, that's
to
awesome.
do a private with Elon.
George is going to
train.
teach him the Superman
And then-
punch.
Yeah, so I think Elon's coming to train with us this week, and then Zuckerberg actually messaged me and he's like, "Hey, man, I might need a heavyweight training partner. You want to come train with me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess so." So like when I first messaged Zuckerberg, I like sent him like a whole thing on Instagram. I'm like, "Hey, man, I'm like I really thought you were a fucking asshole. I'm like I don't fucking like you. I'm like
Seriously?
yeah."
Because
That's
of
like-
his political
yeah.
politics?
Yeah, so that's how I started out, and I'm like I really think you're a dickbag. And then
Seriously?
I went into like this whole thing. I'm like, but I saw you on Rogan, and like, I don't know, I'm still on the fence, but I'm really like, it's really impressive that you're getting out there and doing jujitsu and competing and doing all these things. So then we've been talking a little bit more, and then he was like, oh, hey, like, I've been training. You train with, a couple of jujitsu guys, Mike Musamichi, and
He trains with the dude that trained Cain Velasquez.
Yeah. So then he's like, you want to come out and help me train? So I'm like, yeah, if for sure, if my schedule is available. I always fuck with them. I'm doing a seminar in Hawaii, and I'm like, hey, man, like, I know you have a place in Hawaii. I'm not sure which island, and I know you're kind of tight on cash, but if you want to come, I'll spot you for this one, but don't make it a habit. So, like, I always just send him memes, and I just fuck with them all the time, and, he takes it well. He's cool. He seems like a, like a regular cool dude in person. So,
I mean, this will be the biggest fight ever. If
Yeah,
Dana can make this happen, this will be the biggest fight of all time. Billionaires going at it because apparently Zuckerberg is going to do like a platform that's going to compete with Twitter.
yeah, they should do like a massive like self bet match. Like they should each bet like $500 million to a charity or something. Like who's asked to donate?
I have a charity. Just so you know, it's for pediatric cancer. 100% of every cent goes to the cause. So ChrissAngelHelp.com.
That was actually awesome when you did that. So this is my picture of my grandpa here. I actually took care of my grandpa for like 4 years when he had cancer. I was like carrying him up the stairs at the end. And I was like, oh man, that's fucking really nice.
Well, that's what we can do because everything else is meaningless, right? Like,
Yes.
as I say on stage, you never see a hearse pulling a U-Haul.
Yeah.
You can't take it with you. And when you're here and you're healthy, you got to do the right thing for others. I'm just so grateful to have met you. And for you to be so generous with your time in doing this podcast.
My pleasure.
Is really awesome. I know Frank and Rampage and Mike are all going to be very excited about this. And, I wish you nothing but the greatest success. I know, if you're going to do the super fight with the two billionaires, one kind of goes against your political persuasion, right?
I know,
You're more of a Republican.
I'm definitely more a fan of
conservative.
Elon. Yeah. Zuckerberg. I was like messing around with my friends because I'm always shadow banned on Instagram. They're like, "What are you gonna do?" I'm like, "I should just go into Zuckerberg and have him in a submission." I'll be like, "Lift the shadow ban or I break it." But
You may get shot
the
by
media-
like 16 security guards.
It's one thing, because I talked to Zuckerberg and I'm like, listen, like, if there's one thing I know for sure, it's that the media is fucking bullshit and people just will like make up stories and then it will become reality. So I never really judge people until I meet them.
Right.
And
That's
so
great.
Zuckerberg like seemed like like, a relatively down to earth person. I'm sure there's a bunch of shit that we don't know that goes on that, he has to kind of finagle his way around. And I think he did a pretty good job of explaining that with, how they run Facebook and how they have to deal with, monitoring people and what kind of posts, because they don't want spam bots and everything. So,
Right.
He's well spoken, and I think that
He's a smart dude.
yeah, I'm still on the fence, but if I meet him and I think he's an asshole, then I'll tell him. If I think he's cool, then I'll tell him. So it'll be interesting either way.
Well, you don't tell me now what you think of me because I'm nervous about it.
I think you're awesome.
I'll take that.
I've been like watching you for 20 years, and then you were like, "Oh man, you should come to a show." I'm like, "Fuck yeah, I'm coming to a show."
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and a happy early birthday. I know you have a big birthday
thank
coming
you.
up.
Yes. Yeah.
And come back and hang anytime. We don't have to do this, but really an honor. Come train. I showed you my gym, so anytime you want to use it, you're welcome.
Absolutely. I think actually, I think the end of August when they have Masters Worlds here, I think we're gonna do. It hasn't been announced yet, but I don't care. It can be announced. It's putting out in the next few days. I think Marcelo Garcia actually has stomach cancer right now. He's like another all-time great. So we're doing. I reached out to BJJ Fanatics, and we're doing a charity seminar for him.
That's cool.
So when Master Worlds is coming, I think late August, we'll be back out here. I'll teach a seminar, and then we'll record it and then sell that, and then we'll give all the proceeds from the seminar to Marcelo.
Awesome.
So
if there's
I'll be back out
anything
here.
I can ever do for charity,
Thank you.
magic wise, I'm happy to do it in any way I can
course.
support your future endeavors.
Thank you so much.
And thank you so much, man.
Yeah, thank you. My
Appreciate it.
pleasure.
There you have it. There he is, the man, the legend, the king, Gordon Ryan.
This is Criss Angel's Talking Junkies.